As someone who uses the ADI-2 Pro daily for mixing and mastering, I was pretty thrilled when RME announced the ADI-2 remote software. Not only is the software free and comes for iOS, macOS, and Windows, it also supports all existing ADI-2 devices, including the ADI-2/4, the ADI-2 Pro FSR Black Edition, the ADI-2 DAC, the ADI-2 Pro FS, and even the original ADI-2 Pro from 2016. So it's safe to say that this is a complete software solution for all existing ADI-2 users. Let me show you why I think you should download the ADI-2 software as well.
Version 2 of the ADI-2 remote is a classic RME update. A lot of refinement, a lot of stuff that came from the community that went into this update. So there's a lot to unravel, but I think it's safe to say that many of you are not familiar with the ADI-2 remote. So the ADI-2 remote is the remote control for the ADI-2 series. And this speaks volume about the software and update policy of RME. The developers try to support their hardware as long as possible. And this is true for the ADI-2 remote. I mean, we are talking about a hardware, talking about the ADI-2 now, that is almost 10 years old, and this is still supported. The reason why RME can support the hardware is everything is custom coded. So nothing proprietary in here. Everything that the RME developers are doing is built from the ground up. And for example, one of the key philosophies of RME is always have the intelligence built inside the hardware rather than the control software. So if you think about RME interfaces, Total Mix Effects, for example, is a remote control for the interface. The whole summing and routing is done within the FPGA and the hardware. And this is true for the ADI-2 remote. So for example, if I turn now the encoder on my hardware, you see that this is mirrored by the software. So there is a back and forth between the remote software and the ADI-2. Now let's come to the actual features of the ADI-2 remote software. You have a lot of different menu items at the top. I call them tabs. The numbers of tabs are corresponding to your device. So for example, if you have an ADI-2 DAC, you don't have the line in menu item because of course you don't have an analog input. I have the ADI-2 4 Pro SE connected to the remote software, and that is as big as you can get at the moment. So I can show you all the options available, but depending on your device, these options can vary a little bit, but the general rules apply. So let's go to the line input. And the line input, of course, is the analog input of the ADI-2. It's pretty clear what's happening here, right? I can set the conversion type. I can switch between PCM and DSD. I can set the reference level. Normally I set this to auto, but normally I go for 24 dBu. I have even the option available to load in a parametric equalizer, which I normally don't use because I have the ADI-2 selected as my mastering converter and I have analog equipment connected to that, so I don't need the EQ, but for many people that is really, really cool. One option that just the ADI-2/4 has is the RIAA mode, meaning I can hook up a phono turntable directly to the ADI-2/4 because I have a phono preamp mode in here, and I can even set the amplification in dB. I can even mono the bass, which gives you a more phase-aligned, more, let's say, clearer sound, and sometimes a bass that is more controlled. Then I have advanced settings like digital trim and an AD filter. This is pretty cool. I mean, you can set different anti-aliasing filters here. and even a DC filter. I won't go into detail what everything is doing, but this is really, really cool for the people that need it. Then I have a polarity switch. I can change polarity for the left or the right side. And I even have MS processing, so I can do mid-side processing. And that alone, for you guys out there that want to do mastering, MS, you should definitely try that out. And normally you would pay a lot of money to have an MS encoder and decoder as a hardware device. You have that built into the ADI-2 4. Okay, let's go to the next page. And here is the magic. That's the line output. This is obviously the same for the phones 1, 2, and 3, 4 to a certain extent, because these are all the outputs. But what I can do here is set my digital source. For example, I have the AES source as the connection because I have connected the ADI-2 Pro 4SE to my HDSPE MADI FX card. So I can open that up in Total Mix. That is pretty cool. But generally speaking, this gives me all the control that I want. So not only can I set the main volume, I can set the balance between the left and the right hand side. I can control, of course, again, the reference level. I can even set my parametric equalizer again. And like I said, this is mostly the same stuff. For example, you have again the settings for MS and for the filters, but now you have also Crossfeed and stuff like that. You have even a DC protection filter, which is cool because sometimes if there is a DC signal, you would have some problems. Like there's too much energy and you have, then there can be clicks and stuff like that. You have de-emphasis filters, and the best thing is the loopback. So if you know what loopback is doing, it is sending out the digital signal back to the digital input, and that will give you the option to use DigiCheck. Many people buy the ADI-2 series for their headphones and not for their ADDA conversion. And let me show you why. I have now opened up page 3 and 4, so phones 3 and 4, and it's clearly obvious why you want to have an ADI-2 in your arsenal. Not only do I have the equalizer again and the presets, I can actually linearize headphones within the ADI-2. And I mean, how cool is that? I've loaded in some presets from several headphones that I have. So for example, I have the Biodynamic DT9090, and there is a setting for a WAN DT9090, which I used for a lot of time because my DT9090 is over 10 years old. And now with FreshPads, I have a different setting. And yeah, this is pretty cool. But I use the headphone now, so I set that to the headphone setting. This is really cool. If I have hearing problems, so for example, my left ear is a little bit worse when it comes to treble, I could activate the dual mode and could set the linearizing curve for the left and the right hand side differently. So I can create offsets and let's say, okay, this is better for my left ear, okay, or I go to the right ear. Then you see that this is a temporary preset, so you would have to save that again, but I go back to my normal preset. Okay, this is alone a great feature because it means that you can customize the settings of your headphone to your liking or to your hearing. Another great thing that I love is the crossfeed. Crossfeed means that you can send a signal from the left speakers, for example, from the left signal to the right signal. So you could mix those. This is something you would do, for example, if you want to emulate the behavior of monitors, because if you're sitting in the room and you're listening to two speakers, normally you wouldn't create just, you wouldn't have this sitting position where you can hear the left and the right hand side solely. It's always a mixture between both, and you can emulate that with the crossfeed. Let's go to the device setting page, and this alone just saved my life so much because here are all the important settings of the ADI-2. So for example, I can set the auto standby. I can set the basic mode in which the ADI-2 is operating by default. You can set it to auto or USB. So when USB is connected, it's always popping up as an interface. I use it as an ADDA converter, meaning I have it hooked up to the AES port of my MIDI effects card, and that's it. But I can still use all the clever routing, and I show you that. So for example, I still have the SPDIF inputs and outputs, and I can route them separately. And this is pretty cool. So actually what I'm doing is I'm sending the main signal to the AES port and the secondary signal, so I can control my headphones separately to the SPDIF input. So I can have in total mix 2 settings. I have my main recording channel. This is the AES channel where everything is happening. And then I have my SPDIF for the headphone, and I can set that with my ARC-USB. Pretty cool. Another thing that is cool is the Remap Keys window. So here I have all the remap keys for the hardware, which I can do. Also, I can set the display setting, for example, switch it up to cyan, amber, red, or orange, whatever you like. The best thing is the horizontal meter for me, because I can set it to post effects dBU. So actually the scaling of the ADI-2 4 is in dBU, so I know what is going out in actual RMS terms. And then I can have access to the setups as well. So a setup is a complete state of the ADI-2 device, and I can save that here, load them, save them, and even go back to the factory settings. The next page is EQ presets, and I have 20 preset slots available, plus a temporary slot. The cool thing now is that with the ADI-2 remote software, I can actually store and load presets and can share that with a community or with friends. For example, I know now that my headphone I dialed in perfectly, and I just want to save that as a file that some of my friends can load into their ADI-2. I can do that here, right? Or I can compare different settings. So I can set it to listen and compare between different presets for my headphone. One of the things I had to learn how valuable that is the reload. So I was a little bit stupid. I had deleted my headphone setting, completely here, and everything was sounding strange. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, for God's sake, I don't know what's happening here. And then I saw, I changed the settings. This can happen if you are in the wrong menu and you are just at the device and you dial it in. So I have the reload now. So bam, and I'm back to the saved setting. Another cool thing is the visual feedback. So for example, if I change a setting in a saved preset, the store button becomes highlighted. You see that? So if I go to reload, then that's gone. And if I change a setting again, then you can see, I've changed something in that preset. I can set it to reload and I'm good. The one thing that really came in version 2.0 is the state overview. And that is a lifesaver. People, let me tell you, the state overview is a lifesaver because as you can see, you now have a complete state overview of the complete device, meaning all the digital inputs, the clocking, the reference level for the analog outputs, the digital output state. This is a lifesaver. So I can even set it to dBU, to dBFS. And this is cool because sometimes you want to see exactly what's happening on all channels at once. And this is what the state overview gives you. Of course, this is resizable again. I mean, how cool is that? And the best thing about this is now that I can monitor my complete analog and digital state. I can now also check the sample rate converter state and where the main clock is coming from, where the main sources are, and so on. I think I've talked way too much now, but essentially you can see that the ADI-2 remote is a crazy powerful software. It's available for Mac, it's available for Windows, it's even available for iOS, so you can use it with your iPad. I think I forgot to mention the whole software is free. You can get it from the RME website, it's free, you can grab it and you can check it out. I mean, how crazy is that?
All right, I think it's safe to say that the ADI-2 remote software is far more than just an accessory. It is an absolute workflow enhancement tool. To be able to set your ADI-2 in whatever state you want and to be able to skip all the menu diving, because let's face it, as great as the ADI-2 devices are, you can encounter a lot of menu diving, and menu diving is now a thing of the past. You open up the remote, you dial in your settings, you save them either in a setup or just in an EQ preset, and then you're good to go. And to be able to share my settings now with the community is just great, because headphones are sometimes really subjective, and to be able to try out different headphone settings by just dragging and dropping EQ presets is amazing. Okay, this was my not so short overview of the ADI-2 remote software. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below, and I see you in the next video.